Alright, what's up guys? Time for another video. And I'm gonna do another video. This time I'm gonna give you a little talk, a personal rating, if you will, about these Black & Decker rechargeable products here. Simply because I did a video already just goofing off, not saying really anything, just with this. And it got a shitload of views, more than my other stuff that I post or whatever for some reason, because maybe people are looking for excuse to buy one, and I had some likes on it, and I got a whole shitload of views. I'm gonna tell you a little bit about it anyway. I did get some likes on the last video, even though I didn't hardly say anything. I'm just goofing off in the last video, so we're gonna, even though nobody asked me any questions on the video yet, I'm going to say, well, how come this device is good and these rechargeable power packs. For one thing, what I like about this and this blower both use, if you get any particular brand, like this is Black & Decker, I mean, you kind of like to get a couple tools that have the same battery pack. There's a lot of different brands. I mean, battery pack is shaped slightly different, but what you want is the same battery pack. If you want to buy extra battery packs, put them in a tool belt or something. Or in my case, I almost want to string a whole bunch of them and, like Rambo, string them across my shoulder, or just put them in some kind of tool belt. But I'm going to give you a good report here while I'm rambling here. One battery pack does do a lot for you, because I already used this before. I did some trimming for the neighbors, and then this is great for doing your own area before you mow the grass along areas where you've got to just shred some extra long grass around there, getting ready to mow the grass and shit, you know what I mean? And the good thing about this, you want something with the battery lasts a long time, because maybe you live in an area, whether you live in an area or not, where you have limited or less safe space to store fuel. Maybe you don't want to store fuel. It's a hazard for a variety of reasons. I don't want to go on and on about that. Anything from people stealing the fuel or whatever the hell, or you get some mentally ill person who wants to take it and then just throw it somewhere, start a fire. And maybe the idea of storing fuel, it's costly. And maybe you don't need anything for like really huge jobs. This actually suffices. They said you got this in here, your magazine, you can buy extra magazine here, put it in there, and there you go. But you have to have a blower, along with there. And I have worked at a place before where I was the groundskeeper, where I used gas-powered equipment. The bigger gas-powered blowers, which they're very fun to use. They're bigger, and maybe you need them for a bigger job. I mean, you can blow a lot of shit away with those things, you know what I mean? I worked in a work agency where they sent a bunch of us over there to do a sports stadium where we go with a bunch of guys. They have the backpack type blowers and some of the other things. And in the parking lots, they did a team of people with blowers just to blow it all in, all the cans, bottles, and everything all in one pile, and everybody gathers it all up and everything else. But I was a groundskeeper at a place one time, a cement factory, the grounds over there, and I used gas-powered items because there was a lot of bigger weeds. That's different. I mean, there's a need for things where you got to use something with fuel for bigger jobs. Like I said, fuel is a hazard too, but sometimes you do need it. But then, okay, the pros and cons to anything like storing fuel or using fuel. For one thing, some of your tools, well, there are a lot of you that says, duh, I know this already, duh, but I'll tell you anyway, because there's a lot of people that don't know. Some of the blowers and some of the weed eaters that, you use fuel. There are dipshits out there that don't read the manuals and have not been trained in it, and you can't just use gasoline in them, right? You got to get them, usually they sell it in 6-packs, the little bottles of the oil. That can of gas, you pour one in there, because if you use straight gas, you'll ruin the fucking thing. And it's going to be a lot off the subject, but I've also used them gas-powered chop saws. You know, it's a body of a chainsaw, but a little heavier, and a big cutting disc this big on it. I worked at a scrapyard where I don't think battery power would do very well with those things. Those things you need the fuel, and once again, a little off the subject, but a big thing that's the body of a chainsaw and a big wheel like that. You throw straight gasoline, you run the fucking things, and they're expensive. But anyway, that's the pros and cons to buying anything that takes fuel. If you do buy it and you do need it, pay attention to the instructions. There are idiots out there. You don't want to call them idiots. They don't know. If there should be a caution label real big, or the person that sells you the thing tell you just in case you don't know. But like I said, a lot of people would be like, duh, I knew that. I'm not an idiot. Yeah, but there are people that don't, and I'll say that again. You buy something that's fuel-powered or whatever. But if you don't want to store fuel for safety hazard reasons and all that stuff too, and whether you store it in the shed in your basement, you don't want that hazard or whatever, or you don't trust people. Oh, and another thing, while it's on the top of my head, I worked in factories, any kind of things that where everything you used, solvents or fuel, and this is another thing just in case I work to tell you. In your house, this applies too, whether you keep it in your basement or a shed. When I worked in factories and worked in places, there was the OSHA rules and all that, and safety rules, that you had to have a locker box that's like a fireproof door, and have all your signs on there, flammable or whatever, for whatever reasons. I mean, you can look that shit up. Anybody, I'm basically speaking to people that never worked in places like that before. But in your own house, in my opinion, don't just store fuel in the shed. If you can afford it, it would be more wise to buy yourself some kind of a thing, you know, with a metal door around it. The shit's probably pretty expensive, but I would have something, you know, a lot of safety precautions if I were you, but your workplaces do because I have to. So I go a little, I don't want to jump subjects, but anyway, on with, say this, you can use like a short like this, right? The one thing I like about this, unlike remember the weed eaters with a cord, that fucking extension cord? When I lived with my parents when I was younger. I mean, not that you didn't want to do the job, but the cords that you had, it's a pain in the ass. Your choice used to be the cord or fuel powered. But anyway, you loosen this. Hey, if you gotta be more compact and you don't have a truck that you're driving to do your work, you know, you're just driving a car or you're carrying around, hey, collapsible. You can use it that way, this way, or then this. You press your little button here. Have it any way you want. Any way you want it. That cool. And then your blower, like this, like there are cases, like the reason why I jumped subjects and brought up the field-driven equipment. This suffices. If you got to blow your leaves, I brought one of these because, you know, to blow the leaves for the fall. It works real good, but maybe for a bigger area, a bigger job, and blow bigger things. That's why I brought up that I worked with a team before cleaning a ball stadium. You know, they use blowers in the parking lots because even with them on the garbage cans, people were very messy. A lot of us are sports fans, but when you're a person in a team, maybe you ever did it for a job agency, actually help clean a stadium, it's very much fun to use these. But bigger jobs, maybe you need something that's more than rechargeable. But for this in your house, just like I said too, you don't need nothing that powerful if your place isn't that big. And the subject that I talk about, storing fuel, this works very well after you used your weed eater here, you know what I mean? And one thing I want to say with this, just to be a little bit silly or whatever, what the hell? Hey, you want to take this off like this and double as a hair dryer? Why not? Yeah. Just be silly. Use it as a hair dryer or whatever the hell, you know. I don't know if you want to be silly. Duct tape a whistle or a kazoo or a harmonica on the end of this and turn it on and make some music. Or I'm just being silly, but I have to say something corny or silly just because that's who I am. But yeah, this would do you real well without the fuel-driven stuff, because buy a few extra one of these, get a tool belt, you know. Well, this in my case, I got one of these old tool belts I bought from a friend. I used to work in a factory where I had to seal crates. We used nail guns to do the crates, but to seal the top, I worked at a place where we sealed a particular product. We can use nail guns that, well, I used pneumatic nail guns in some places, but some departments where I worked too had the rechargeable nail guns where you put the thing in there with the battery, and then you had to have this other CO2 cartridge instead of, you know, the pneumatic nailer. But there were times where I had used a nail gun, right, and then also, you know, but to seal the top to risk damage the product, they made you use a hammer by hand. So I had everything I needed in here. So this tool belt I bought off a friend of mine that I worked at a warehouse. I still got it. I see all kind of cool tool belts in stores and online. Really tempting to get. They're really expensive, but don't need it. I got one of these. But if you want to buy yourself a tool belt with bigger pockets, put a few of those in there. But I would almost want to take this shoulder strap, right, just to be funny, you know, and have wear a whole bunch of these up and down the strap, right, and then be like Rambo a little bit, you know, and just then lock and load and put your clip in, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, I had different kind of stuff that I used to do, like years ago, for many years. But yeah, they didn't have the rechargeables back, say, when I was younger, you know what I mean? But in my opinion, I've seen some of the other things like the circular saws and that. For my opinion, if you have a real big job and not just cutting a 2x4, you'd have to spend a pretty good bit of money for a rechargeable circular saw. I would rather not use them, to tell you the truth, because I worked in places where they had a bunch of extra batteries, and always when you or somebody else had to use the item or told to cut something, a whole bunch of batteries, all when things on charge, and you know, and switch the battery, and they were all good. And circular saw had a tendency to, they take more power to run and suck up your battery, and you got to keep. If you need a bigger job, you need the plug in a wire on that, like, and you could this is off the subject, but anything like saws and shit, like rechargeable is good for screw gun. You can just all day with a screw gun, but things like a saw, you got a bigger job, forget about it. Battery powered circular saws, I think, are not designed or even meant for like big ass jobs. I mean, because you'd have to change the battery too much. I mean, even if you get the better ones, I think it's more of a pain in the ass. So there's the pros and cons to your electric circular saws and table saws. You know, well, that's just more for people who are just in the market for buying things, and if it's somebody that's a professional watching this that knows that shit already. But I'm almost talking about the normies that maybe have never had any prior history of working in any kind of place or using certain equipment. And I try to keep you from spending money out of presumption, you know what I mean? But I think as far as weed eaters and blowers, if you buy extra batteries, you can use these pretty much in the place of fuel-driven equipment. And you can also, in doing so, like I said a couple of times already in the video, you know, you don't want the hazard or hassle with the fuel. And then if I have to tell you, repeat it again, yeah. I think that's the most important thing. I said it repetitively in this video. you want to buy something gas-driven and you have no experience using it, you just believe in what other people tell you, you know, I mean, yeah. You gotta, if somebody doesn't tell you, that sells you it, or you don't read the instructions, fuel-driven things, you need to buy the little oil stuff and put in with that gasoline, or you can run. You might as well take a cigarette lighter to the money and burned it, you know what I mean? But these will work very fine for you. But if you need more heavily, maybe like thicker things that you've got to cut down, I mean, you can get things with the blade on it, or there's other kind of equipment, a little bit more dangerous that you can use to knock out stuff up. And from my understanding, that there was a blade that you can put on those weed eaters. I saw on TV one time, it was like a few years ago, the Weed Terminator, you know, in place of this, you know, have the blade. Because there are sometimes, like, no matter what kind of good weed eater cord you have, you know, you get them more stubborn ones, but how I dealt with that too, no matter what kind of equipment I did, I've used, like I said, experience with the gas-driven ones in my work jobs. Bigger or thicker weeds, there's some dipshits that were going down a little bit, like, and just trying to whack it from the bottom. Some of us go from the top down, just shred up everything the top first, then go down, you know what I mean? To keep from being slapped by them pieces that kind of spin around. You ever have that happen to you? You hit from down lower and all that, and that it kind of cuts it off. But as you ever have it get stuck or wrapped around the wheel just enough for a couple seconds, and the long piece kind of slaps you a little bit. But now, if you have mixtures of briars and other crazy shit, and then if you have some other stuff that's like a little on the thicker side, you know, even if you use one of these and it's all you got and all you can afford, you can whack down the heavier, thicker shit anyway, you know, by other means, you know what I mean? But yeah, if you want to save some money and you don't want to spend a lot of money, this is definitely for you, and they are fun to use. Definitely fun to use.